Everybody, thanks for joining us. I am honored to host Russell Earnshaw, Rusty, as he's known. So I is with Rusty Earnshaw today. Booyakasha, Aliji. So a little technology issues, but we got there in the end. So Rusty, thanks for joining us. This is Rush Nation. We're going to record this and go live with your permission, of course, and then share it, and I'll share it back with you as well. This is the first time we're using this forum. So right now we've got a handful of people on from around the world. We've got Dr. Leonard Zachkowski on, who's been on our webinar before, who wrote the book with Dan Peterson, The Playmaker's Advantage. So I'll connect you with Len as well after, if you don't know him already.
Sounds like he's way more intelligent than me.
Yeah. So let's get going. Let's tell us about your journey and your story, and then we'll dive off into some other areas. But firstly, thanks for getting on.
No, thanks for having me. What's my story? Don't know. A boy from Middlesbrough, done all right for himself, escaped from the northeast. Yeah, I mean, I played in a time before the game was professional, so I often look now at the players that play and think possibly I might not have played back then. I went to uni, all the stuff that lots of people don't necessarily do now. I played a couple of good games against Bath. Luck always plays its hand in this, I guess. I ended up playing for Bath, played a bit of rugby, did really well in my first year, so I went to the Com Games, won the European Cup, possibly got a little bit ahead of myself. Managed to eke out probably a reasonable 15 years of playing the game. Coached England Sevens. Spent 2 years. Worked in the pathway with England with the 18s and 20s, and did 3 years of kind of leading on coach development. During that time, just started to connect up with lots of other sports, which is probably where we're at now, really. So last year I set up with Fletch Magic Academy. We work cross-sport, cross-business, kind of probably doing lots of the stuff you guys are talking about and doing around learning environments, and especially trying to create really good spaces for young people to grow and get better and have fun. And then exploring lots of the aspects of that, feedback, session design, questioning, co-coaching, all of the things that I guess lots of the world are suddenly starting to get excited about in terms of coaching, because I think probably for a relatively long period of time we might have thought it was something that it wasn't.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Now, there's quite a few angles and tangents we could go off there. So, obviously played rugby. I think you won a European championship, right, as a player?
Yeah, I was lucky.
Yeah, and then you played at university too, yeah? You played at Cambridge?
Yes, I did a maths and economics degree. I was introduced the other day at Rangers Football Club as an economist, which I quite like. I'm not, but I still continue to tutor, so I do love economics. I tutor economics as well. I mean, it was probably the first time in my life, and clearly lots of people will see this with the people they're coaching, that I thought, this is what I want to do. So I was all in. I wanted to go to Cambridge, so I worked really hard at school. I'm definitely experiencing that in coach development at the moment, where I'm trying to make sure that they're the ones that are all in, rather than me as the coach developer kind of being all in. So I'm sure we'll talk about that as well.
Yeah, we'll get to that tangent. So coached as well, right? Coached at England and England Rugby Sevens, right, for a good spell as well.
Yeah, right? and for soccer coaches, that isn't the under sevens. That's 7-a-side, so it's a shortened version of the game, 7 people on each team, and there's a World Series, so America are top of it at the moment, so everyone should know about it. So some pretty cool places to go and play rugby in: Hong Kong, Vegas, Dubai, Wellington, Adelaide, Glasgow. So that's a pretty cool place to go and learn how to coach and get some pretty it's a good environment because I mean you play 6 games over 2 days, so you're constantly getting feedback from the game, and you're having to adapt and work stuff out as a coaching team, and as probably more importantly as a group of players.
Now, as the 7v7 game modified, Rusty, or do they still play on a sort of full-size pitch?
Still playing a full-size pitch. There's some versions in England of cross-pitch sevens, which is half a pitch, because I think one of the disadvantages of playing rugby union at an early age is that if you're stood on the wing, then you don't touch the ball. So I guess it's a bit like there'll be lots of players in American football that don't touch the ball. So certainly we would have players that if you spend 10 years on the wing, you're possibly not as skillful as someone who's as a quarterback.
Yeah, you're not getting your 10,000 hours like Gladwell first presumed, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely not getting opportunity. You're missing on some opportunities to get better, would be my view.
Yeah, brilliant. Now, you so while at England, is that where you met Fletch, or did you know Fletch beforehand?
Yeah, well, I coached sevens with Ben Ryan, and then I went off and spent 2 years teaching, partly because I was away from home so much. So lots of coaches will be able to relate the fact that often we get the work-life balance a little bit wrong, and so I probably was getting it very wrong. And so I spent 2 years teaching, which was brilliant. We lived 20 yards from where I worked, and that's quite rare for a coach. And then job came up in the pathway with England, and I knew Fletch from historically, and I knew Peter Walton, and I wanted to work with them and learn off them. I'm pretty hungry to learn. I'm also, one of my biases would be I'm easily bored. So 2 or 3 years in one place, and Rusty's thinking of where else could I go? And so the job came up. I got offered the job. Bizarrely, Joe Lydon, Joe just texted me then, who now works for Irish Rugby. Joe rang me and offered me the job, and he said, "You got 24 hours to choose," which is probably good, because another one of my things that I'm pretty poor at is sticking to deadlines. So I'm very good at procrastinating. In fact, I'm one of the best in the world. And for someone to give me a 24-hour deadline was actually, fair play to Joe, it was exactly what I needed. So we had 24 hours of life is, we're in a good place. But I really, and my wife was super supportive. I wanted to go and learn and go and experience some new stuff. So I hadn't worked a massive amount in the development pathway. Let's call it. I don't like splitting up development and performance, but it's called the development pathway. So I worked, and I really wanted to go and learn some new stuff, and I definitely did. And alongside that, I did coach development kind of from, just across everywhere really, loads of different environments, lots of teams, lots of different types of people, young, old, boys, girls, men, women, and so I probably just got to make a lot of mistakes very quickly, with lots of good people around me to help me kind of make sense of them. And I'm sure we'll talk about our cards later, but I would say our cards are probably 20 years of mistakes in one deck of cards.
Brilliant, yeah. So while we're on the England and we're on cards, let's talk about the cards that you were involved in creating the acronym with England Rugby and how that came about.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one really. If you look at all kind of sports or educational organisations, they'll all have their version of cards. So if you go on most websites, they will say we do resilience, grit, growth mindset, care, whatever it might be. And I guess for us it was about sitting down with the then England coach Stuart Lancaster, with some players, with lots of people with some, let's call it expertise in this area, and just getting curious around where we saw the game going and what we felt were the skills required to do really well in the game of the future. So clearly the kids we're coaching now will be playing possibly a slightly different game to the one we're playing. So I know you joked about man-to-man and zonal, but I work with hockey, and 4 years ago the Belgian hockey team started going zonal before everyone else, and they just won last year's World Cup. And so the game's now changed. Everyone's playing zonal. And so the game evolves. It'll be in rugby, especially because of law variations and the law changes. So we went, look, what are the key skills? And I think, across most sports, you wouldn't disagree with many of these, or you wouldn't find anyone who wouldn't say, I don't want I want my players to be like this. So C was for creativity, and that is about solutions to problems. So real good example from that. So Mike Beale, who's head coach at Rangers under Stevie Gerrard, I said, how come you ended up coaching Mike? And Mike said, because I had a 18-year-old left foot and a 2-year-old right foot. And what a brilliant analogy. And actually, I've used that a lot with players now. If your left-hand pass is 15, how old's your right-hand pass? So just to get them to think differently about how they almost grade themselves. So my point is, Mike wasn't creative. He only had a left foot option. He barely had a right foot option. So he lacked solutions to problems. A was awareness. So that would be really around awareness of yourself, awareness of others, and then awareness within the game. So people might call it like game understanding. I think my challenge to most coaches would be, why are the people with the best awareness the oldest ones? Why does it take 10 years or this imaginary 10,000 hours to become really aware? Well, what aren't we doing lower down to make our young players really aware? R is resilience. So how do you deal with pressure? And clearly that's different for lots of different people. I think that one would be very individual and be very context specific, and clearly your environment would have a big impact on that. D would be decision making. I think we would, my wife's trying to pour a bowl of cereal at the moment quietly and doing a pretty poor job of it. D is decision making. So actually we would want players that can make really good decisions. And then S is self-organising. So that is, how can we coordinate ourselves in a match to win the game? I mean, ultimately, to beat the game, to win the game, that's the type of stuff we're trying to achieve. So we just sat down. It kind of was nice because it went into a word that helped. So it became cards. And then we were pretty, to be honest, we were pretty implicit with it to start with. I think often lots of NGBs or organisations are quite scared about going, here it is, here's the answer. And I don't think it is the answer. I think it's part of the answer. So they would be some of the skills that are required. And then what I would challenge all coaches on is, well, how are you doing it? So if your website or your sport says we do grit, then what are your house skills? So as a coach, what are you doing both on and off the pitch to ensure that your players can demonstrate grit? So it was, and what it probably helped a lot of people with was, it just moved you away from that kind of technical shaping, technical framework model of actually, look, we need to run sessions where people have the opportunity to remain creative. I think in kids sport, often we're just taking it away from them. So how are we going to create that? And actually, on top of that, we might do a bit of, we clearly would, if we saw there were some themes around a player isn't effective with his passing or her passing, then we would help support them as all good coaches would.
Yeah, brilliant. And just looking at those qualities, right? I mean, decision making, self-organized, resilient, awareness, creativity. It doesn't really speak of the tactical things. And I think your recent podcast with Rich Berry talked about resilience, right? And then there were some numbers thrown around, or Rich looked at the numbers about teenage suicides and kids not being resilient and that kind of stuff. And I think it was the second biggest taker behind car accidents, I think teenage suicides in England. Was it ahead?
I mean, it's, and look, so it's been interesting. So we just did, I've been working in cricket, and cricket has got the highest suicide rate of any sport. It's a very lonely game.
I wonder if baseball's that way in America.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, really similar. So lots of people are playing the game, but generally it's 1v1. And the consequences of, I'm out, well, I'm out. And I get to sit and watch the game for So, and they're away from home a lot as well. So cricket's a 5-day match. So, so it was really interesting because one of the things we did at Worcestershire Cricket was get the kids to kind of design sessions with us. So we created some cards and we got the kids to then go, well, which ones would you want to put in the session? The number one, so across a large number of groups, every single kid wanted to put in the card, make a player smile or laugh. Every single kid wanted that card in. And these are, in inverted commas, let's call them elites, but they're not. They're in a development pathway, but they are seen as kids with high potential. And interestingly, the parents who were kind of facilitating it, because we wanted them to start to understand what the kids were, what the kids loved and enjoyed and felt about sessions, the parents were desperately trying to give the kids the resilience cards. And often the kids chose them. Now, and quite, is it a skill we would want in all our kids to deal with pressure? Well, of course we would. So let's be really intentional around how we do it. So here's a good example, I guess, for coaches to take away, and I've spoken about this a little bit recently. So England women's cricket, and so take men's cricket and then involve girls, and becomes even more complicated for me because I've learnt the most from coaching girls. So they talk about wobble moments. So how can we have a wobble moment? So and I tried it the other day. So I just was at England handball, and I said to one of the kids, I said, look, asked him what his observations were of what had just happened. He said, he started talking very technical. I said, okay, that's cool. Are you curious as to what my observations are as a I don't understand handball. It's the first time I've seen it. And he said, yeah. I said, well, what I noticed was this. So your behaviour changed around a couple of things, and I'm definitely curious about it. And I'm wondering if we can maybe create some wobble moments here. And so he then said, yeah, so actually when this kid does this, it agitates me. When the referee does this, it agitates me. And so we just then spoke about it. He goes over with the kid. He's never had it before. I just said, look, if you need my help, I can help you. He then decides he's going to smile every time the referee makes a poor decision. I mean, twofold. One is releases all the good chemicals in your body. Two, referee loves seeing smiles. He's more likely to give you decisions. So I just think it's an area we need to explore. And for me, it's about the appropriate amount of stretch or wobble moments, but with the right support as well. So what I've noticed is lots of people kind of misinterpret the talent needs trauma bit and just administering trauma. And then saying, yeah, but talent needs trauma. And I'm thinking, I think it needs support and love. And the word love isn't, and Rich Berry spoke about it at the end of the podcast. I said, what would be your 3 key bits of advice? And I was quite surprised that even he said, look, don't be afraid of putting an arm around someone. It may be the only arm they get around them that week or that month. And so, I would talk a lot about loving environment. So another thing people might be interested in looking up is Dan Hughes' model. I've spoken a bit about it, but his stuff around attachment and they would talk about, in those environments, the coaches being place, so playful, loving, accepting, curious, and empathetic. And I can speak for myself and say I find accepting the hardest. So actually that kid that's messing around and taking up 40% of my time, and I'm thinking, I just wish you would work as hard as this kid. But actually I've got to imagine that kid's my kid. So my litmus test would always be, would I want that person to coach my son or my daughter? And if not, then I may well be having a conversation. Not many people do have conversations, and so I think there's a lot of stuff go on certainly in junior sport in England, that I was thinking of an analogy, and I was thinking, if that coach was a doctor, he'd be struck off.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, you said it was play, loving, accepting. What was the C and the E, Rusty?
Curious and empathetic. So that's a Dan Hughes model. So we spent a lot of time with a lady worth following on Twitter, Suzanne Brown. Yeah. She just posted something on our Magic Academy site today around attachment theory and how can adults connect with. I mean, attachment theory is essentially creating an environment where kids are able to go and explore their boundaries in the world, but actually come and this is how I understand it. This is and have someone that they can come to and help them make sense of it. So I would speak to a lot of coaches and a lot of players where they're often struggling to make sense of stuff, and I guess I'm a bit of a sounding board for that, as I'm sure you are, and lots of people who are listening are, where you're just trying to help people make sense of their world.
Yeah, brilliant. Now, you've spun me out. So you said being intentional and deliberate, right, in what we're doing, and I think many of us have a tendency to coach the way we were coached, right? And you just said something key there as well. If that was a doctor, the doctor would probably be struck off because they're not practicing that way anymore. So the game's evolving, the way children learn is evolving, or the information they return. So I think retain is evolving. So I think it's important that we evolve too. And a lot of clubs will say player-centered on their websites, but then you go to the training session and it's the coach that's barking and bollocking instructions. Well, how's that player-centered? Well, they got to make the decision. What was the decision? Well, take part or not take part. So what advice can you give the people on and the people that watch this later about being more intentional and deliberate in creating some of those, say, resilient skills or creativity?
Model it.
Okay.
Would be a good start for me. Often I look at kids argue with referees, and then I look over and I see the dad, and I think that makes sense to me now.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're going to ask kids to get better and challenge them and get them to think creatively about solutions, then we need to be coaches. We also need to be vulnerable. So actually, we've got to get some stuff wrong, and we've got to admit it. And we can't. I think lots of kids can be quite fearful of making mistakes, and we've just got to make that normal and talk about it's an opportunity to learn stuff and what's our insight around it.
The acronym we use on that, Rusty, on mistakes is FAIL. The acronym that we use for mistakes is FAIL, and we tell kids we want them to fail, which is the first attempt in learning. I don't know whether you've come across that one.
It's a great example of it. I mean, we have lots of kids that are in lots of really schools that are quite excited about exam results, and often they're perfectionists, and once again, they've just got to get used to. Do you know what? We might be operating, if you get 63% right, then that's pretty cool, because we're actually 37% stuff that we're going to gain some insight from. Clearly, I would, if a kid's new into the sport, they're not getting lots of failure with me, but if Marcus Smith is at 17 years of age and a potential England player, then we're definitely challenging him around his boundaries and how far we can push him and what we can do. So Marcus will be a good example of. So actually, I'll give two examples of players and one example of a coach to maybe bring this to life. So one is Ben Loader. So Ben Loader is really quick, good at defending, can push someone to an edge, but actually not that good at going forward and getting the ball off people. So if I grab Ben on the way to training and I'm just like, look, Ben, bit of a challenge for you today. If you can get 5 interceptions, all the coaches will do 100 press-ups. Because I know Ben needs to think about going forward more often. It would be a bit like trying to make Paolo Maldini and just saying, right, you can only intercept in training. So Paolo Maldini makes half a tackle a game on average in his career. Well, let's set kids something that's going to make them think like Paolo Maldini. So Ben gets 2 interceptions within about 5 minutes, and I'm thinking, well, none of us could do 10 press-ups, let alone 100. So I then tell the whole group. So I tell everyone, including the players, Ben's trying to get 5 interceptions. If he's on 2, if he gets 3 more, then there's a meaningful consequence for all of us. And by meaningful consequence, it might be, a fortnight dance, or we sing a song, or something that would probably put more fear in than 10 press-ups. And so there's a Ben Loader example, and actually just setting people little challenges. Marcus Smith, Marcus is fly half, he's a bit like a quarterback, so we're just giving people secret missions around Marcus. So a couple of people have been told you've got to give him incorrect information and see if he overrules you. Some people have been told to not even speak to him at all and just see how he reacts, because he would rely upon that information. And with Marcus, we're not telling him in advance. We're seeing how he reacts. The opposition team know that they're going to try every time they annoy Marcus. And Marcus has explored gazing, which would be something I would recommend for coaches to look at. So the All Blacks are the most successful team in history, and they use gazing, so G-A-Z-I-N-G, and it's about staying in the moment. It's about not worrying about the past or hypothesizing about where the future might be. It's about being in the moment, about being in flow. And so it's definitely something I would recommend to coaches. Not enough teams pay attention to it, in my opinion. In fact, in rugby, no one does, apart from the All Blacks. And they've won the last 2 World Cups. And then the last example really is probably of Jody Paul. So Jody is hockey coach with England 18s. His pitch side behaviour could be better. So one day I decide we've built enough rapport. Actually, today we're gonna get down to business. So I give him 5 of our coach challenge cards. So I pick game ones, so they're all the black ones. So he doesn't. But I say pick 2, so I would give him choice. So when you spoke about motivational environments, I don't know whether you. But Lara Mossman's stuff around what behaviours can coaches dial up. So number 1 behaviour to dial up is choice. Number 1 behaviour to dial down is punishment. My observation in a lot of coaching, I don't see much choice. I see a hell of a lot of punishment. It's probably not that helpful. I wouldn't want you to coach my kids. So I give Jody the opportunity. So let me see. Let me give one that would have been good. One for Jody. Do not shout instruction during the game unless for safety purposes. Praise character. So that would have been one of the 5 I chose for Jody. He picked 2. He then, we had a coach development day. So we had 60 coaches in the room, and I said, out of interest, Jody, we did this thing with the cards. Well done, mate. Strong work. And I said, out of interest, Jody, which cards did you pick? And he showed them to 60 people. So I thought, brilliant. He's had choice. He's now told lots of people, so that's awesome. He's more likely to do it. He's got people who are going to be observing him, so he's not going to look great if he doesn't. And then he just goes ahead and he does it. I mean, so just thinking about how we can nudge people. Now, the team didn't do so well because previously they'd been reliant upon his instruction. So I probably had about a 12-hour delay for him to calm down and come and find me. And then go, right, well, let's explore some other ways of doing this. And he's now loving his coaching. It's actually made a difference to his well-being, would be my view. And interestingly, they just went over to Holland. And the Dutch are pretty good at age grade stuff. And they did really well, and they beat the Dutch team, they don't do that very often. However, I'm not that bothered about the win. But what I was really excited about was, so Jimmy Culhane, who's the assistant coach, and Jimmy's been my way of influencing Jody as well. Jimmy messages me and says, 20 minutes after the game, Jody was told what the score was. He hadn't even realised we'd beaten the Dutch. So I was like, that is happy days really, that he's kind of so just, he's just not focused on the win.
Yeah, brilliant. And here's a little bit, I mean, we take our coaching so serious over here, and everybody, if you're not standing up and yelling and screaming, then they don't think you're coaching. And about 10 years ago, I went over to Man United and had a couple of kids from America with me, and the coach comes over and he gives me the session plan, and it was under 9s and under 10s. His first priority on the thing, the first objective was fun, and I'm like, it just took me back, and I just went, okay, wait, this is Man United, and their first developmental priority on this thing or objective was fun. Who am I to take myself so seriously, right, and coach and stuff like that? So I thought that was a massive moment for me. And the other one was, just remembering that children only get one childhood, right? And I think we forget that often. you know. So I've shamelessly stole, Rusty, your raise your hand if you want a child. Yeah. So I've shamelessly stole that, but when I do that, kids just look at me. I don't. No, I use it with coaches and adults. But you spoke about the cards there with Jody, and I was lucky enough.
Can I just tell you a quick story about that as well? So I was lucky enough. I took some hockey coaches into an England goalkeeping camp, and it's not like a normal goalkeeping camp because there's outfield players there as well, and so it was a really good camp anyway. So, but the first thing they did, so these kids were 14, under 14. And the first thing, and exactly the same, the first thing they did, they had a table tennis table. They said, right, kids, you've got to come up with a game that involves all of you. So there's like 12 kids, and you can only use your phone as a table tennis bat. So immediately, no one's on the phone. They're using it as a bat, and they're playing a game. And the whole camp was built around exactly that, because our role is to make them fall in love with sport and be as lucky as we were in the experiences we had. Now, at some stage, they may choose not to play sport, or they may choose to play another sport, but I don't see our job as being any more than to make them fall in love with sports. And actually, once again, that becomes quite liberating. The challenge you then have is you've got to hang out with like-minded coaches. So, for example, my son's team, and I don't coach them, but they don't play certain teams, and those certain teams are now starting to struggle. So they're losing players. People are starting to walk with their feet. The half-game rule comes in England next year, so it was optional this year. It's mandatory next year. Every kid under the age of 19 in rugby, if they turn up, will be guaranteed half a game. So the kids, you wouldn't do it in the classroom. You wouldn't say, oh, little Johnny, you're coming in for the last 2 minutes, or I'm just going to coach the 3 best mathematicians, or you wouldn't shout at people in the classroom. You wouldn't let parents stand outside shouting in, no, divide it by 10. I mean, it's quite frankly ridiculous.
Carry the 3.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, brilliant. And you're so right. And I think Rich Berry said, listen, if we saw a coach smack a kid in the legs, what would we do? We would step in. But we allow coaches to slap kids in the brain by yelling at them, right? I think is what he said on your pod as well.
How sad is that?
Yeah, no, it is. It's very sad, right? And I think there's few and far between of the coaches that step in and stuff. But so with Jody, you use the cards, right? And the challenge cards was do not shout instructions, right?
Yeah.
Is that the one? Tell us a little about the cards. Let's talk about the Magic Academy cards, and then we'll open up to a few questions and we'll dive in. But tell us about the work you're doing at Magic Academy. You've been to some really cool places. You got to hang out with my buddy Juan Gonzalez Mendia, and I won these. I won these at the Future of Coaching conference, and I can't remember why. Yeah, I did. So I was really happy about that.
You know, I'm going to South Africa with Juan in just over a week. So. Yeah, I mean, look, the origins were very simple. I was doing coach development. I was just about to go into an England under-18 camp, and I thought, how can I playfully nudge some stuff? So Dave the physio, Big Dave, only hangs out with the players that are injured. So I write a card and I go, right, Dave, you can only have lunch with the players that are fit, because he doesn't know them. Or John Fletcher, you have to go and have conversations with the 3 players least like you. So I just designed some individual ones. If you want to do it, it's cool. We don't have to do it, but if anyone wants to do it, I've designed some cards for you to go play around with. But what we will do is, if you do it, we'll just chew the fat on the evening. So they were really a little bit around provocation and to maybe disrupt people's thinking and try something different and see what happened. And then maybe if it would lead to them doing some stuff differently that would ultimately lead to better outcomes for kids. And I'll maybe talk about a quite funny story around an unintended consequence. We then, when we left the RQ, we went, actually, we're going to design a deck of these. So 20 years of coaching mistakes, bit of input from some other people, and that's exactly what they are. So how have I seen them used? I've seen kids pick them for... I think there's a spectrum. I think at one end of the spectrum is, I'm going to pick the card that's my super strength, and I'm going to reinforce my super strength. And at the other end is, I'm going to either get the parents or the kids to choose cards for me. And I think in between there's lots of colourful alternatives of, we sit around the table and maybe me and you, Chris, and we pick one for each other that's a strength, or we pick one for each other that's one that we feel the other person could get better at. Or we ask the kids to do it for us. Or halfway through a session we stop it and we go, right kids, you've got to pick out 3 cards that you think would make the second half of the session even better than the first. So I think there's and clearly people are more creative in their own context than I could ever be, and they come up with lots of good ideas and they share them with me and I go, that's a great idea. So that's I guess the origin of them. My favourite unintended consequences. So I said to 2 kids, I said, look, we were doing a session and I said, so we're going to co-coach with one of your coaches, and I said, look, pick a couple for me, a couple of challenges for me to do in the session today, and then pick one for your other coaches each. And so for one of the coaches, they picked have a positive interaction with every kid. And at the end, I just chewed the fat with the kids. I said, oh, how did you find it? What was the impact of it? And how was your coach today? And the kids went, he was really creepy. So I think the point is they're also quite provocative. So they are like, have a session with no huddles. Don't allow the kids to speak in the break. So limit all your interactions to 19 seconds. And the reason that one's in, because in English rugby, over 1,000 sessions, 75-minute session, on average, ball in play, 23 minutes. So that means for 50-something minutes, there's an old person, often speaking to some younger people who are missing the opportunity to get better and to actually have fun and run around and become healthy and all of that stuff. So I think there's a myriad of ways people can use them. My preference would be, I probably would have 2 preferences. I tend to start with people's strengths because I don't want to take you away from being you. I definitely don't want you to coach like me. And I would definitely give people choice. So I would be very unlikely to pick Chris, you're not very good at this one, mate, and give it to you. I think that wouldn't be that good. And they just got lots of conversations. So I don't know how you use them, but all my coach development now, I just throw them on the floor and I just say, right, pick one that's your super strength, pick one you could be better at, or pick one that'll change your world. Go and pick one that you've seen someone else in the room do really well, because then we get some, we all want someone to come up to us and say, oh, Chris, I love the way you do this. You're brilliant at stretching the best players. And it's just like the conversations we wouldn't normally have.
Yeah.
Quite frankly.
Brilliant. So it's kind of the porch to feedback, right? If feedback is the house, right? I think I heard Stu Armstrong say that. And then you're inviting somebody in. Once you've opened the porch door, they're in, right? And you can have honest dialogue, yeah?
Yeah, and it just doesn't feel as invasive. We're talking, I think Gerard Jones, who's over there in America, I sent Gerard his set and he went, Rusty, you've changed my world. Yeah. Coach development is so much easier. And then I guess over time, as you use them, you start to build up stories about them and maybe suggest some ways people might think about them and give some examples of how they could be used really well or possibly not so well. That's generally how they've been, and they've been really well received. And they work across sports. People are using them in business. We're starting to develop a business set as well, which will hopefully be done in the next week or so. It's a cool place to be, really, because I guess like the coaches you're interacting with, lots of coaches want to get better.
Yeah. I'm working with a lot of volunteer and voluntold coaches. So just for those listeners who are on, or people who will watch this later, one of the coach challenge training cards is this: it's create an environment where the players challenge you without you prompting them. They must challenge you 3 times in a session.
Yeah, cool.
Right. So brilliant. That's brilliant. Mine are not as used as they should be, but I did break them out a couple of times and send you videos. And I think we just, if we use them, people can do hashtag beat the game, right, and put it on social media as well.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I mean, that challenge one's a brilliant one. That was really around how can we be vulnerable? How can we get stuff wrong? So I was a teacher, so I spent 2 years teaching economics, and I hadn't done my economics degree. Well, I did do one, but 20 years ago, and I'd forgotten it. So I was learning. I was a page ahead of the kids, apart from with the year 13s where they were a year ahead of me. So about a month in, one of the kids, Josh, says to me, "Oh, Rusty, what's X inefficiency?" And I say, "Josh, I think it's this." And he says, "Sir, you have no idea, do you?" That was quite a pivotal moment. I just was like, I don't. We're all learning this together. Please don't tell anyone, type thing. But I actually thought it was really powerful moment for them to understand that, I was trying to learn as well. So that card actually came about a year into being with the 18s. I just hadn't seen people challenging coaches. So I was like, right, we're going to be really intentional around this. We're going to design stuff, and we're going to see if they challenge us. Because if they don't, it would be a good measure that actually our environment isn't as good as we think it is. So I remember standing up, and there was about 50 coaches watching as well, and all our under 18s players, about 35 players, 50 coaches, and putting a slide up and just deliberately saying stuff that wasn't true. And Gab Zibitaya, who plays for Harlequins, just went, "Rusty, I disagree." I was like, oh, thank God someone disagreed. Thank God. So that's been a real powerful one for me. And I would, typically most sessions, either deliberately do stuff wrong or go, "Oh, what was that thing we were talking about? I can't remember," or just go, "Oh, we did," and just try and just to, I mean, it's a good way of checking for understanding as well.
Yeah. Brilliant. So the people on Rusty, they can get the cards from the magicacademy.co.uk website. They can order from there.
I think it's www.magicacademy.co.uk, and there's a store on there, and there's a link to all the podcasts and stuff. So.
And and I sent out a couple of the podcasts, and also the one you did with John O'Sullivan, just so people could get a bit of a background on you and stuff like that. But it's the work you're doing. Hopefully you'll be at. I know one's going to do the Future of Coaching conference too. He's going to do another one. Hopefully we'll get to meet that one.
Yeah, we're going to be there. We'll help him with it.
Brilliant. But if there's questions from the audience for Rusty, please go ahead and ask, and just introduce yourself. We've got a shy crowd today, Rusty.
I know.
For the audience.
Can you hear me all right, Chris? This is Len Zakowski.
Dr. Len, how are you? We can hear you.
Rusty, wonderful presentation. Did I hear you mention somebody called Eddie Jones here a little while ago? Eddie's obviously coaching with the first team. Well, the reason I'm going to a legendary teacher coach in America here, Vern Gambetta. You've probably heard of him. Yeah. He has his company called GAIN, G-A-I-N, and he's having a 5-day seminar for coach development at Rice University in Houston. He's invited me to early June, and he mentioned people who were coming. Because I asked him, he wanted me to give a couple of presentations on stuff I wrote about in the book, The Playmaker's Advantage, which was basically about how do we train decision-making in athletes. Yep. And so he wanted me to focus a little bit on that. And so I asked him who the audience is. Well, it turns out they're all high-end coaches. And he says, then somebody called Eddie Jones coming over from the UK in rugby. And he, and we talked about others. I don't know there's many all blacks people, but I've met many of those. Over the years, studying great sporting teams. But so I gather that you do know him, and so I just kind of wanted to bring it up. But the other thing I saw on your website that you'd worked with a young grad student, PhD student Mike Ashford, on decision making. And it's so hard for me, after writing that book and even researching for the book, that there are many people in captivity, coaches in particular, who've thought a lot about how we can train decision making, developing that reading the pitch, seeing plays in advance, kind of that intuition that many people say you're either born with it and you have it or you don't. And I've always believed that being a teacher for many years that it surely can be trained. We just haven't focused on it that much. And then the next thing is that the decision making is like making quick and accurate decisions, and they differ by sport, of course. But I also wanted to ask whether the only I ran into somebody after this, a guy called a Scottish soccer coach, Kevin McGraskin, who I found out was in Toronto, and we had some good conversations. He sent me some of the work that he's done on decision making, which I thought was incredibly similar to what we talked about in the book. And then I tried to reach out to him just recently. And then I found out he moved to the Cook Islands. So I sent him a link to God. It's just, you're a long way from anywhere now. So I guess the point I'm making here, Rusty, it sounds like you're into the decision-making stuff. I know Kevin was. And it's just hard here in North America, and that was the purpose for writing that book, is to start thinking more about the importance of teaching among some of the skills we have to teach young kids, and even in more advanced athletes, the importance of decision making. So I just wanted to get your take a little bit more on the kind of how you proceed with trying to train or getting coaches to be sensitive to thinking about how you train decision making.
It's a great question, and I'm definitely going to get your book. And by the way, you'll have a whole heap of fun with Eddie, because he'll be box office, so he'll come out with some quotes and he'll swear a lot, and it'll be quite exciting for everyone. He's definitely larger than life.
That's great. Yeah.
Look, and it's been a big focus for us, and my observations are probably quite similar to yours, that certainly in youth sports in England, we are taking away decision making. So I've had a really high level international rugby coach tell me, why would you coach decision making? The players are too stupid to make decisions. Which is sad, and it doesn't surprise me that his team is struggling. So there's two things actually. One is about coach decision making. So I think that's probably that's the arena I'm in at the moment. So actually, were you intentional around that? Was it intentional that as a coaching group you were all stood in the same place looking at the same thing? I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I just want to know about, how did you end up with that decision? I think a lot of my time has historically been spent with on players and developing decision makers, and it's, as you know, it'd be really complicated. So, I'm always thinking of it from the coach's point of view. So if you create an environment where it's not okay to challenge and coaches don't get stuff wrong, then players probably will do what they're told. And there's a real interesting thing going on in hockey at the moment where they're moving the players from man-to-man to zonal. And Danny Kerry said to me, Rusty, the hardest thing is you don't have to make a decision on man-to-man. You just follow another human around. So they are now going, and these are guys who've been to Olympics and they've been playing their sport for 20 years. And they are really, and they're doing, by the way, they're doing well, and Danny's doing a great job. But that was the big bridge to cross, was the mindset change. And so we often found ourselves doing that at about when we started to interact with some of the kids at 15, 16, that by that stage they'd had 6 or 7 years of, this is your role in the team and this is what you do. And as simple as, and put it like this, so if you told someone they were a tight end in American football from an early age, that would influence their decision making later on. So if you were told in England you're a prop in rugby, you're unlikely to kick. There would only be a handful in world rugby of props who kick. Now in the game of the future they'll be kicking, trust me. Or the best teams in the world will be. And then thinking about, as a coach, well, what's your language around decision making? So I watched some of the England coaches in the build up to the 2015 World Cup saying our decision making protocol is this, and I'm thinking, it's a protocol already. It's like we've removed the decision making, and then once again we do practices that we're claiming is decision making, but it's not really decision making. So
right.
I guess my challenge to coaches is possibly to coach more about what's the information you're seeing and hearing, and therefore what are you going to do? So what are you looking for? What are the cues that might help you? So in defence in rugby, is it that they're flat or they're deep or they're wide or they're narrow, or is it that that person, I know he steps off his left foot, so as a result I'm going to stand this side of him, as opposed to, and the other. So the thing that brought this to life for me the most, and it took me ages to think of this question, so in rugby, around the ruck, so a bit like a scrimmage, people are given labels, so they're called often guard A, B. Let's say it was guard A, B. And everyone does it, and they love it, because they can get there and they can put their hand up and they can shout guard, and they don't have to make a decision and look at anything in front of them. And so it took me ages to ask the question, if you couldn't say guard A, B, what would you say? And they started going, oh, pillar 1, 2. I said, no, you can't put a label on it. What would you say? They said, well, we'd say what we see in front of us and we'd talk about what we were going to do. Which one would you prefer? But clearly they prefer that one. But the reality is that coaches have, they can monitor the guard A-B stuff. So that's really easy. We can monitor that. We can look at the video, see who put their hand up. You could run there, put your hand up, have your eyes closed, and you get a tick. That's how ridiculous, I guess, it's got. And then the other thing I'm thinking about with decision making is, clearly creativity is a big part of it. If I've got an 18-year-old left foot and a 2-year-old right foot, or let's do it in rugby terms, if I've got an 18-year-old left-handed pass and a 2-year-old right-handed pass, I'm probably not going to scan to my left. So I'm probably, that isn't really an option because I can only do it like a 2-year-old. So already that limits my decision making. Yeah. And we show there's a really good clip from a under-20s Junior World Cup final, and England lose. We have a chance to score to win the game against the All Blacks, the Junior All Blacks. And a young player gets the ball, and it's a two-man overlap outside him, and he chooses to take it in. So we then started to explore what we thought influenced his decision making, and then we asked the kid. So, I mean, go figure this. So he was a prop from a young age. So he was told he was a prop. That doesn't help. He's right-handed, not left-handed. So he can't pass that well off his left, and people haven't challenged him enough. His mum is on Twitter retweeting lots of stuff around structure and organisation. So when he goes home, he gets that message all the time. He's at a club that is probably the most structured club in the competition. So that's even more reinforced. So there's just so many variables within decision making for me that I think it's, I haven't read your book, but I imagine it's actually about understanding the individual. It's understanding where their strengths are, and it's starting to talk about, what might be possible and move them on, and what have you seen, and unpicking why did you make that decision, and what other decisions were possible, and where was the best space. And I think it would be a big thing for me was starting to understand that feedback is from them to us, not us to them. So I think a lot of coaches are of the opinion, well, if I just tell them stuff, and then we have that classic coaching conversation of, but I told him or her. I think that's probably changed my coaching significantly, understanding feedback from them to us, not us to them. So close your eyes, what have you seen? Actually, if you haven't seen that there's an opportunity on the right, then actually I need to know that, because I'm assuming you have, because I can, but I'm not you. So becomes very complicated, that, and I guess that's why then coaches go, well, if we just narrow this down and give people structure with very, very limited options, and clearly that would work. However, from my world of wanting to create players that win World Cups, then that doesn't work. That doesn't win World Cups.
No. No, thanks so much, Rusty. I'll be in touch with you for sure because we have so much in common to talk about. And
Yeah,
you're
no.
doing to
What was the name of your book again? I've got a terrible memory. I'm going to put it on my phone.
The Playmaker's Advantage.
Yeah, it's been in the UK for some time. It's easiest to get it on Amazon, probably. Yeah, called Playmakers.
Amazon's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's been,
Terrible for the high streets, but it's great for me.
Yeah, and they just opened up the paperback in Australia when I was there in January. So it's around the world, and in New Zealand as well. So, but what you're doing just fascinates me, and I look forward to meeting your colleague Jones. Yeah, in a couple of weeks.
I'll give you another good example in rugby. So everyone's obsessed with, like, when the person goes to the floor, they lie down in a long position and they present the ball. And if 10,000 hours existed, then most kids have done 10,000 hours of being a worm. However, you would prefer the ball lifted because it's quicker, but everyone's just copying everyone else. And so it was only when we started going, well, why wouldn't you lift it? And a load of Premiership coaches just turned around and said, it's ridiculous. Why would you lift it? It's risky type thing. And now everyone in the world's lifting it. And the other challenge with decision making is, well, how can we be ahead of everyone? How can we be thinking in the future rather than, as England often do, just copy what the All Blacks do?
Yeah.
But we're then always 12 months behind them.
Exactly.
We'll never win a World Cup unless time switches on its axis.
Brilliant. Rusty and Len, I'll connect the two of you via
thank you so much. Thanks so much. Yeah,
and thanks for getting on too.
There may be other questions from other folks here. Yeah.
Yeah, there might be, but it doesn't matter. You got in first and you spoke up.
Alphabetically, yeah.
Alphabetically, yeah. So if there are any other questions for Rusty, let me know, or just speak up and again announce yourselves. We're coming close. I want to be sensitive to Rusty's time and his family time too. But if you have questions, speak now or forever hold your peace, because we're going to finish like Rusty does to his guests on his webinar, where I ask some questions and he gets to give one-word answers.
Oh, nice.
Rusty, you up for that, right?
Yeah, I'm keen. I'm very keen.
Okay, here we go. Name one of your mentors.
So many. Kevin Bowery, Nigel Redman, Keith Lyons, John Fletcher, every kid I've ever coached.
Brilliant.
Every kid you coached. Yeah, exactly.
We have had a question come in. Oh, Anonymous. This was fantastic. Thank you, Anonymous. Yes, it was. I concur. So
that wasn't me, by the way.
No. So mentoring. One-word answers, Rusty. One-word answers now. Mentoring. I love the look on your face there. You really think.
I can't do a one-word answer because I just think it's coaching. So I'm going to say coaching.
Yeah, that's okay. That works. Rugby.
Fun.
Rugby sevens.
More fun.
That's 2 words. I would have said exhausted. I would have said exhausted. Feedback.
Vital.
Yeah, love that. Magic Academy. Oh, lights out. The bell's gone. Round 15. Here we go. I didn't know whether you heard that bell or that was just me. Magic Academy.
The future.
Future. Brilliant. Cards.
Anchor.
Love it. Google.
Energy.
Energy. You can expand on that one because I know you did a bit of work for Google, right?
I just love going in their environment. I think it inspires me. We got a day there next week with some hockey coaches, and they'll feel it when they walk in through the door. Now, there's a lot of things that Google could do better, by the way. But one thing they do is actually the physical environment, how they configure space to help people be more effective, more inspired. I think it's class.
And they have a version of their own cards too, right, Russ? Don't they have a version of their own cards?
Yeah.
Mess up cards, yeah.
Let's call them mess up cards.
Yeah, we'll call them mess up cards. Stuart Armstrong.
Hates NGBs.
NGBs. I don't think he will.
He's on a crusade. Let's call it crusade. Crusade.
Yeah, ditch those drills. Learning environments.
Everything.
Family.
Oh, love.
Six Nations, England v Scotland, second half.
Oh, beautiful.
The second half was beautiful.
Oh, yeah, because I just love the sport. I mean,
Yeah.
it was interesting. So a week after it, we did a thing up in Edinburgh, and the kids picked the cards for me, and it was include a scenario. So I started the session with it's 38-31 to Scotland, or whatever the score was. 2 minutes to go. This team's England. You've got to try and draw the game. And I think the England team were deliberately trying to lose, and Scotland won. So we just replayed history. But if the game looked like that, I mean, it's the same as the football at the moment. Oh my God! Like, you'd be. I mean, they're filling stadiums anyway. But I mean, it's just shows what's possible with sport. I'm out on my feet off the sofa. I just don't feel that enough in sport. There's not enough ooh and ah moments. There's too many, well, I know what's going to happen next moments.
Well, yeah, but I tell you, when we talk about sport, right, we've got to talk about the uncertainty of outcome. How many Liverpool fans were hiding behind the couch, you know, and then jumping up off the settee? We talk about comebacks, right? Talk about comebacks. And, you know, I saw you posted Klopp's little thing. But, you know, while we're on that subject, listen, even our football clubs don't want to leave Europe, Rusty. Even our football clubs don't want to leave Europe. 4 teams, first time in history that
amazing,
4 football teams, yeah. So back to the one-worders. I've got 2 more for you.
Cool.
New Zealand rugby.
Switzerland.
Switzerland. I know you call it Switzerland. Switzerland. That's 3 more now.
Switzerland skiing.
So would you say, just like New Zealand rugby, right? You said that England's 12 months behind because we copied them. Is that? Would you say that's an accurate assessment?
I think they've got
to answer that question. You can plead the 5th on that one.
I think they've got some brilliant coaches.
Yeah. And you think that's the difference there?
Yeah,
the history, is it the...
Yeah, I mean, we did a pod the other day with Dave Ross, and, you know, actually lower down they don't. There'd be lots of... But what they do have is lots of free play. It's in their culture. Everyone wants to play for the All Blacks. I mean, these guys could go and earn millions abroad, and they stay because they want to play for the All Blacks. And clearly the All Blacks now adapting, and sabbaticals are becoming more normal, especially in Japan, where they can earn a lot of money, and it's not going to tie their bodies too quickly. So guys like Wayne Smith, Steve Hansen, you know, they've just got some excellent coaches, and they're creative, and clearly, once again, their context is, you know, they are inspiring the nation through sports. I think they would want to win 38-37 rather than, you know, 6-3.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a 6-3 Premiership rugby game the other day. 6-3.
Yeah.
Like a football match.
Yeah.
And
there's not that many football matches that are like that. 6-3, to be fair, unless it's an aggregate score.
Yeah.
Right?
I just think that, and then also just their environment around coaching, where it would be, you know, they would share loads. So an interesting stat I heard the other day, and Huddle, I've got a sharing site for the Australian Super Rugby coaches. It's their most active site. So suddenly Australia, and they're starting to suddenly do really well in Super Rugby, better than previous. And actually, one of the reasons is that the coaches are sharing more. In New Zealand, it would just be normal. So did a pod with Glenn Delaney, and Glenn said, you know, he didn't know whether they were joking when they just said, you know, could we support you even more? This is the NGB, you know, how can we support you even more? We're doing enough for you. He was like, is this a test? Like, brilliant. All of their reviews are done really, you know, collaboratively, and they post. I asked him about it on the last pod, you know, post-match, what happens? We go and have a beer, we sit in the change room with the opposition, we chew the fat, we chat about coaching, wow, that doesn't happen in England.
Yeah, no. No, I don't think it happens here either, to be fair. But we've tried to do some collaborative stuff. Now, two last ones, Russ.
Yep.
Brexit.
Madness.
Free play.
Critical.
Yeah, brilliant.
We learn through play. I mean, it brings joy. I mean, it's interesting. Whenever I say, sometimes I'll do development and the kids are there or the players are there. Sometimes I'll do it when the coaches are there. And I'll say, and as I would with any session, I go, look, just get a game going, go and start. Like adults, like you can close your eyes and hear them whoop in, and I'm thinking, you lot are like 50, and put your hand up if you used to be a kid.
Yeah.
No one has ever gone straight into a drill. The adults don't go, oh, well, let's do a drill, let's build it up, let's straight into the game. They remember what it felt like, and I don't know, maybe we just forgot that, and maybe, there were some expectations around what coaching is. Why wouldn't it start with the game? Why wouldn't the session start with the game and then we work out the problems from that rather than have expectations? And then why would we do a session and do, build up to an end and then start again really low down, the next week, when we're going, well, we wouldn't do that in maths. We wouldn't go, oh, we got all the way up to algebra and now we're back down to 1 + 1 and 2 + 2. Because I think people would be bored and they might misbehave. So often with coaches, who have problematic kids, you might want to think about your session design.
Yeah, absolutely. Rusty, been brilliant, mate.
Right, thanks for having me.
No, thanks for having. I'll share it with you, and I'm going to try and develop with some friends here some football ones and send them your way.
Nice, we're doing some football ones as well. Top secret.
Well, listen, if you need anybody to be on your think tank committee for that, happy to jump in and collaborate as opposed to doing it separately. You know what I mean?
Yeah, mate, that's cool. It's a deal.
So, brilliant. Thanks everybody for joining us. This was Russell Earnshaw with the Magic Academy. He didn't have his bobble hat on today, but he was been brilliant and shared the knowledge. Rusty, as soon as we get the video, I'll send it your way. We'll hyperlink it, and I will connect you with Dr. Len as well. And the book is called The Playmaker's Advantage.
Cool.
Also available on Amazon, softback now in Australia and South Africa, if I'm not mistaken.
Nice. And if anyone wants to get in touch with me, it's rusty@themagicacademy.co.uk, and just feel free to drop me a line, and if anyone wants any stuff I can help them with, then I'll help them. I'm actually over your neck of the woods. Well, I'm in North America. I'm going to Montreal. I do actually, worth mentioning, actually, it's probably my favourite 4 days of the year. So it's July the 11th to the 15th, I think it is. At Bowdoin College, we do coach development. So we do 4 days on the pitch with girls rugby players, and it is brilliant. I think, as you alluded to earlier, lots of people rock up and think this is what coaching is, and where's the structure, Rusty? And then we just kind of work on individuals, and we get on the pitch together, and we have lunch together, and we chew the fat. And it's called Polar Bear Rugby Camp, and it's the coach development bit, and it is my favourite 4 days of the year because my son is with me, and we just have a laugh. And then I'm down in New York for a few days as well.
Let me know when you're in New York. It's only an 8-hour drive, Rusty. I'd love to connect.
Oh, mate, you're really close.
Yeah, really close. Hey, in the US, that is close.
Yeah, wonderful place at Bowdoin College. I've been there many times.
Oh, it's beautiful. I love it. So Mary Beth runs it, and she's class. It's a really, it's a cool environment.
Yes. Enjoy.
Cool.
Brilliant.
No, thanks a lot. Appreciate you guys. And
thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Chris.
See ya. Rusty, I'll be in touch, mate. Thanks. Bye, everyone.